Hi, I'm Peter Tragos, host of the Lawyer You Know podcast and YouTube channel. The saying goes, everyone hates lawyers until you need one. Well, I'm here when you need one to answer your questions and give you insight that you didn't know you needed. Along with my partners, Pete Sardis, the professor, who has a finance and business background, and George Tragos, my dad, and the consigliere, a criminal defense giant, we can answer any questions you have.
Hi everybody, Pete Sardis for the Lawyer You Know, and today we are talking about the fiasco of Casey White and Vicky White that orchestrated this grand escape plan. So the real life Bonnie and Clyde, Thelma and Louise, insert your favorite duo here. We'll talk about kind of who they were, what happened, and how we got to where we are now. But before that, if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. If you like the series that we do on the Lawyer You Know, please subscribe. And as always, leave me questions and comments down below. Okay, for those of you that are unfamiliar with this case, Casey White is an inmate at the Lauderdale County Jail. He and a deputy actually orchestrate an escape where he is broken out of jail and they flee multiple states, and they were finally apprehended this past Monday. So who are these people and how did we get to where we are? All right, let's talk for a second about Casey White. This guy is, he's a peach of a guy. Let's put it that way. He is an imposing man. He is 6'9", 38 years old, about 330 pounds. Not a small guy by any stretch of the imagination. Not a guy that can easily blend in with the environment. So let's talk about his background a little bit. All accounts seem to indicate that he is a white supremacist in a local group called the Southern Brotherhood. He is a guy that has a history of mental illness. He also has a history of drug abuse, and he's been in and out of trouble with the law pretty much most of his adult life. The time where I think this guy really goes bad starts in about 2010. In 2010, he is accused of beating his brother-in-law with an axe handle. That beating was so bad that it wound up costing Casey White 4 years in prison. After he's released in 2014, maybe early 2015, he becomes a suspect in a murder of a lady by the name of Connie Ridgway. Connie Ridgway was, a nice lady, mom, soccer mom type, if you could say that in this part of Alabama. And she is found stabbed to death in or around Lauderdale, which is where this whole case starts. Now, Casey White's actually interviewed by law enforcement and is a suspect in that murder, but they can't corroborate enough evidence to actually link the murder to him, so he's never formally charged. But thankfully, this doesn't end his criminal career. He winds up in 2015 getting himself into a heap of trouble when he steals a gun from a neighbor's car and winds up carjacking a lady and her baby. He goes on a spree that includes, fleeing from law enforcement, home invasion, robberies. It's just a train wreck of crimes. He winds up getting indicted for 15 crimes, including attempted murder, and winds up getting convicted on 7 counts, which buys him 75 years in prison. So in 2019, he goes off to prison to serve that sentence. And while he's in prison, he allegedly confesses to the murder of Connie Ridgway, which is what brings him back to Lauderdale, Alabama to stand trial for that murder. So it's about 2020, he's back in Lauderdale, Alabama, and he meets a lady by the name of Vicky White. Now, Vicky White and Casey White have no familial relationship. He's an inmate at the jail. She happens to be the deputy director of corrections. And by all accounts, a great law enforcement officer with an illustrious career of over 35 years on the force. Obviously, she's the deputy director of corrections, meaning she's the number 2 person at the jail. If you want to know what's happening inside of a jail, you know who you talk to? Not the sheriff, not the prison guards. You talk to the inmates. The inmates say that when Casey White came back to the Lauderdale jail, some sort of a relationship started between him and Vicky White. And the inmates will tell you it was something out of the ordinary. There were privileges that were afforded to Mr. White by Vicky White. For example, extra food. He was able to become a trustee. And if you don't know what a trustee is, it's a trusted inmate. They normally use inmates to do labor like cooking or cleaning the facility, maintenance sometimes if they have those skills, light administrative work. But that job, if you would allow me to say it like that, gives the inmates a little bit of freedom of movement to be able to do things other than sit in a jail cell staring at a wall all day. Now, this is odd because here's a guy that's serving 75 years in prison who has a violent history of aggravated batteries, kidnappings, murder. Normally not a guy that would be eligible to be a trustee at a jail. But regardless, he gets some privileges. Apparently, Vicky would come and visit him on her off hours, meaning the times when she's not being the deputy director of the facility. This relationship kind of evolves over the course of 2 years. Now, at some point, the sheriff's department catches wind that Casey White is going to attempt to escape from jail by kidnapping someone. So the sheriff indicates that they shake him down, which is technical term for they go into his cell and they search the cell and they search him. They wind up finding something called a shank. And for those of you that are not up on your prison vernacular, a shank is basically a knife made out of some sort of materials that are readily available at the jail. Sometimes they can be sharpened pens. They can be, razor blades made out of, springs and things like that that are readily available inside of a prison. It's something that happens often, and law enforcement are constantly looking for weapons made like this. They're all collectively known as a shank. All right, so they identify a shank, and what winds up happening is they corroborate that he is trying to do a prison break and that he's orchestrating an opportunity to kidnap someone in order to make that happen. In response to this, the Lauderdale Sheriff's Office sends Mr. Smith back to the Alabama Department of Corrections, where, remember, he's still serving prison time for the kidnapping, attempted murder, carjacking, home invasion robbery that he was convicted of back in 2016. Ultimately, though, he winds up having to come back to the Lauderdale jail because he does have court proceedings that are happening in his local county. Now, the court proceedings that are happening put him in a position where he again rekindles his friendship with Vicky White. The accounts seem to say that they were friendly. There is no proof yet of a physical relationship, which, happens in jails all the time. Let's not kid yourself. But it doesn't seem like anybody has testified or has provided any information to lead us to believe that actually the relationship was more than just psychological at this point. When does this go south for Vicky White? The day before she is scheduled to retire. This is April 29th, about 2 Fridays ago. Vicky White takes Casey White out of his holding cell, walks him through the jail, tells her supervisor and the jail staff that she is escorting him to a mental health appointment, shackles him, takes him out of the jail, puts him in her sheriff's cruiser, and leaves the facility. At some point, obviously, law enforcement figures out there's no appointment for Casey White to go anywhere today, and they start looking for Vicky to see what's going on. They wind up identifying Vicky's patrol car with her radio, her handcuffs, just her personal equipment inside of her patrol car. That patrol car was abandoned in a local mall. So at this point, the sheriff's office know, oh God, something's going down and it ain't good. And the story gets even wilder as the investigation goes forward. What do we know? Ultimately, the sheriff's office starts doing some investigations on Vicky because they realize Vicky has now aided the escape of Casey White. They do some research, and what do they find out? They find out that Vicky had bought a car the day before this jailbreak. And a little bit more evidence reveals that Vicky White actually sold her house for $90,000, which may not sound strange until you realize that her house is allegedly valued at somewhere closer to $300,000. So sells her $300,000 house for $90,000 and goes and buys a Ford SUV under an alias name at a local car lot. Law enforcement at this point goes on television. The sheriff says, Vicky, if you're safe, shut this down. What are you doing? You're risking your life. This guy is a dangerous man. He is somebody that without his meds can turn on you very quickly. Please turn yourself in. These pleas apparently fall on deaf ears because Vicky does not turn herself in. And the car is found in an impound lot in Williamson County, Tennessee, which is about 2.5 hours north of Lauderdale, Alabama. All accounts indicate that that particular vehicle seems to have had mechanical problems and was found abandoned on the side of the road. At this point, law enforcement realizes they're fleeing. The sheriff again gets on the horn and does some interviews and says, Vicky, turn yourself in. He's concerned now because he realizes she is the Deputy Director of Corrections. She's been a law enforcement officer for more than 35 years. She understands police policy, procedures. She knows what the law enforcement protocols are going to be. She knows what the sheriff's office is going to do. And this concerns, obviously, law enforcement because they recognize that this is going to be a difficult case to crack since Vicky is theoretically a step ahead of them in all of the thoughts and all of the actions that they're going to undertake. Now, on May 3rd, a Ford F-150 pickup truck is discovered on a surveillance camera in a place called Evansville, Indiana. The reason that it's kind of odd is because there's a man that is pictured next to that vehicle in the car wash, and he is an imposing guy. About 6'9", 330 pounds, matching the description of Casey White. This information is provided to law enforcement. Law enforcement actually sends the U.S. Marshals because now this is an interstate manhunt. The federal authorities get involved. So the U.S. Marshals does a little bit of searching and digging. They go up to Evansville and they get the surveillance tape. They snoop around a little bit, and what winds up happening is that law enforcement, the Marshal's office, identifies Vicky and Casey inside of a Cadillac sedan traveling on the highway. When they find out it's them, they corroborate, they confirm their identities. A chase ensues. So the marshals and the sheriff's office from Indiana, law enforcement are chasing Casey and Vicky in the Cadillac. Casey's driving. One of the U.S. Marshals is able to ram the Cadillac, causes the Cadillac to roll over into the median. When law enforcement finally approach the vehicle, they indicate that they've never fired a shot, but they pull out Casey White, who says to the deputies, actually the U.S. Marshals, "Help my wife." Okay. They look in the vehicle and it's Vicky in there, and it appears that she's been shot in the head. She's trapped inside of the mangled steel of the car. Casey says, "Look, man, I didn't do that." They take him into custody. The law enforcement officers basically cut Vicky out of the car. They take her to the local hospital. They determine that the gunshot wound is self-inflicted. She winds up dying in the hospital in Evansville yesterday, which is the 9th. At this point, is going to be taken back down to Alabama. Not only is he going to face the charge of murder for Connie Ridgway from 2015, but now he's looking at additional charges: escape, fleeing law enforcement. I'm guessing he's going to be either charged or, if that nothing else, accused of what's called felony murder. And what does that mean? It is a murder committed in the course of committing a felony, meaning that he is committing a felony by fleeing from law enforcement, and because Vicky has died, he can be charged as an accessory to her death. Even though he didn't pull the trigger on the gun, he was there. It was part of the grand scheme and plan. He's going to get charged for that too. Does it really make much of a difference to him since he's already serving 75 years in prison for that craziness back in 2015? There's a good chance he may be convicted of murder, and now just another set of charges on top of him probably isn't going to affect this man much. What is going to affect him a lot is, at this point, I perceive that law enforcement is not going to play this game with him ever again. I promise you he will be shackled wherever he goes. I promise you, if the sheriff's office or the corrections department has anything to say about it, he'll have armed guards around him 24 hours a day. He will not have a moment of privacy from this point forward in his life. But really the point of this, the sad part of this, is what causes Vicky Smith, a person who is obviously a trained law enforcement officer, someone who everybody says for all accounts was a consummate professional, a wonderful person, to fall in love, that's what I'm going to call it because I don't have any other way to describe it, with a dangerous convict, a accused murderer, a guy that has done really, really horrible things. Let's be real. You're in the jail. This is your job. You see men, women, whoever, coming and going all the time. And as part of being professional, you keep your distance between you and the inmate. It stays professional. But what causes this woman to really fall for? There's no other thing I can think of. This super dangerous guy. All right, is he a big man? Yeah. Is she attracted to big men? Sure, let's presume she is. So what? There's not other big men out in society that she could potentially have a relationship with. Was she really so enamored by this man that she not only risked her pension on the last day of the job to break him out of jail, but obviously this cost her life? She knew that there was going to be repercussions to this. You can't tell me that a law enforcement officer of 35 years experience doesn't realize they're going to come looking for this guy. Of course she knew. She orchestrated this entire elaborate plan. She wound up changing at least 4 vehicles. The police car, the Ford SUV that she bought under an alias, obviously another vehicle, a Ford F-150 pickup truck that she must have procured somewhere in the escape, and ultimately the Cadillac in order to, in my opinion, escape to Canada. What I do think is odd is how long this took. And the reason I'm saying that is I'm a guy that lives in Tampa, Florida, and we moved down from Toledo, Ohio, which is northwest Ohio, right south of Detroit, Michigan. And that's a 24-hour trip. I don't understand why Casey and Vicky are missing for a week, but only get to Evansville, Indiana. I mean, for the first week, they got from Lauderdale, Alabama, only to Tennessee, which is like 2 hours away. So really, you're orchestrating this elaborate plan to break out a convicted felon and accused murderer from jail, and you only get 2 hours away in a week, and then almost 10 days later, you get to Evansville, Indiana. You all couldn't find a way to drive all the way through to the Canadian border. And let's not forget, the Canadian border spans the entirety of the continental United States. I'm sure there is a forest somewhere you can walk right through because there is no fence between the United States and Canada for the vast majority of that space. So what goes wrong here? What goes through her mind that has her so A, enamored with this guy that she breaks him out of jail, and B, so flustered that she can't find a way to move 1,000 miles in less than 2 weeks? I don't know. Your opinions are important to me. Tell me what you think. Do you think that the plan just went sour? Do you think at some point that she realized that this guy is dangerous and a problem, and then he took charge, at which point she had no control over the plan anymore? Do you believe that the vehicle breaking down just put such a damper in her escape plan that they just couldn't execute this thing? But then the next question is, what were they going to do when they got to Canada? This guy does not exactly blend in. 6'9", 330 pounds, swastika tattoos and rebel flags all over his body. This guy is going to stand out, especially in Canada. Let's be real. This guy, is going to stand out like a sore thumb if he goes to try to get a job or, work somewhere in, to make a living. Even if he doesn't, what are they going to do on $90,000? I'm not saying it's a small amount of money, but you're not going to live the rest of your life on the lam with 90 grand. So she knew at some point that they were going to have to work in order to be able to survive, unless, of course, their plan was to be on a crime spree for the rest of their short-lived lives, which in this case meant 11 days for Vicky Smith. And let's see what happens at this point with Casey Smith. From my perspective, I don't comprehend how this went so bad after the elaborate plan worked so good to get him out of the jail. What do you guys think about Casey White? Do you think he actually had feelings for Vicky White, or do you think she was just a pawn in his shell game to bust him out of jail? What about the whole comment about help my wife inside of the car when he is arrested by the federal marshals? He's not married. There's no indication that they did get married. Again, let's just presume they wanted to get married. Why not wait till you get to your final destination where you're safe, if that's even possible, to have all that stuff done? So at this point, we know Vicky's journey is over. I feel sorry for her family, but Casey Smith's journey is just beginning. I'm curious. I'm going to try to follow this case as best I can for when he returns back to Lauderdale, Alabama, goes back to the Alabama Department of Corrections, because I'm certain they're going to charge him with additional crimes other than just this murder that he was back for. And I'm going to see if any of that stuff is interesting enough to talk about it in the future. If you enjoy this video, please let me know about it. If you want me to continue to follow, leave me some comments down below and I'll make sure that I do that. But for now, thank you for joining us. If you enjoy the video, give me a thumbs up. If you're enjoying the series that we do here at The Lawyer You Know, please subscribe. And as always, questions and comments below. Thanks. See you soon.
Thanks for watching this episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you like this content, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to our page and like our videos. If you want some interaction, get in the comments and we'll be sure to get back to you. If you want to know any more information about our firm or this page, you can find out in the description or visit tragoslaw.com. We post multiple times throughout the week, so make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notification and not miss out on the next episode.